Good morning. I'm Julio Saenz along with Mauricio Riveros. Today we'll meet Adrian Hale from the Rochester Chamber of Commerce and learn about their new initiatives.
We hope you will be inspired.
Celebrating leaders in Rochester's unique and vibrant business community, we'll meet entrepreneurs whose passion and perseverance have helped push through life's challenges. Join us as we share their stories and journeys to success. It's time to be inspired.
Adrian, thank you very much in Be Inspired, a show that we designed to inspire our community, interview people like you who have many things to tell and show, how it's growing here in Rochester. So tell us, who is Adrian?
So Adrian Hale is a 31-year-old native son of the city of Rochester. I'm from the northeast side of the city. And I was born and raised here. I graduated at 18, went off to the Marine Corps, did 2 deployments to Afghanistan. After that, I started school at MCC and re-enlisted in the Air Force Reserve. I met, Bob Duffy, who's become a great mentor. I worked for him twice as I transferred off to Yale, came back over the summers, and now I'm a full chamber executive. I'm the senior manager for workforce development, talent strategy, and education initiatives.
That is wonderful. Thank you again for being inspired today. So tell us a little bit your story. You started working in the chamber and working in workforce development, a topic that is fundamental. So tell us, what was that defining point? That you said, this is my career, this is my dream, this is my passion.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that because my passion actually started in education, because I felt like if kids can't read and do math, then they're never going to have a successful career. And then as I got into my work over the summers here at the chamber, I learned that the workforce development sector was huge. There are either resource capacity building efforts that need to be undertaken because so many underserved communities don't have what they need, whether it's childcare, a license, a car, stable housing. I mean, you name it. Or there's a skill development component. So if they're illiterate or enumerate or don't have a credential or don't have skills, I kind of saw that an extension of education being a foundation to a solid future. Workforce development was that bridge, like once you graduate high school and you go out either to college or you go into the workforce immediately, or maybe a skills trade, or maybe even enlist. Workforce development is the element that makes sure what you have directly aligns with the work opportunities that are available.
Now, I can't help but think of a couple of things when you mentioned that field and sort of the way you came to understand its importance. How do you feel? Well, where do you think Rochester is right now as far as having the developed or trained or skilled workforce that the local economy needs, that local employers need?
Well, I think we can do a heck of a lot better. You're not, obviously, no one's blind to the fact that we have crushing levels of poverty here that disproportionately affect communities of color, Hispanic, African American, and some of the new American populations from Southeast Asia. So we could do a lot better to ensure that we have the kind of workforce development efforts that uplift and are inclusive. So I guess you can say there's a focus now on how do we remove the barriers to entry. So what I kind of noticed was we would credential folks and they still wouldn't have successful retention rates. They still wouldn't have successful, social mobility ladder moving upwards, getting a raise or whatnot. Or we get them the resource supports like an automobile or a license or, training. And I realized that we can't be blind to the actual workplace and start to do a real assessment of, are the conditions in the workplace favorable to those same communities that we see left out of the traditional systems that equip and enable you to be successful in work? And the answer is we got a lot of work to do.
So Adrian, one of the realities is that, I work in the construction industry. Mm-hmm. And for, I will say, past 5 years or maybe 3 or 4 years, we have been very, very busy. Mm-hmm. And it was very difficult to find tradesmen, people who work in the plumber, electricians, you name it. So why there is not a focus on developing that type of talent and really try to, reduce this gap? And so what's the strategy around that?
So I'm glad you asked that. There's actually a couple that I support wholeheartedly and try to do as best I can to put resources there. The first is the Rochester Construction Training Center, which is out on Buffalo Road. And I've actually connected them to some of the leadership, in construction that you're also familiar with, because they're a non-union based skills development effort. So they're not necessarily putting you in an apprenticeship, putting you in a skills trade union, but they're giving you the skills that you would use on a construction site. And then also there's a Project MAP and Project Phoenix, which are pre-apprenticeships that pipeline people into the skills trade. So that's your traditional unions. Right now, they're actually in some negotiation with the state to secure funding. As you know, COVID is going to wreak an apocalypse on funding everywhere from our school districts to our municipalities to organizations, membership organizations like the chamber. So, COVID is going to have an impact next year, no doubt, on a lot of these training programs. But we have to make sure, to your point, that we fight and advocate for these critical, training efforts, because they're literally serving the populations that we're talking about.
Very interesting. And what other initiatives do you have going on at the Chamber of Commerce right now that you're working on?
Yeah, so the big one right now is Rock 2025. I'm most importantly involved with the talent strategy, but there's also a marketing and branding for our region portion, and then there's a business retention and expansion effort. But in the talent strategy world, there's about 3 different efforts going on. I oversee 1 to 2 of them. The ones I oversee is the Employment Opportunity Work Group, which is a work group that has pulled folks from all across different sectors to come together around a collective impact table and try to design how can we remove and identify the barriers to economic inclusion for what we consider the hard to employ populations. And there could be any number of reasons that they face significant barriers and headwinds when trying to participate in economic life. And in that group right now, we have some pretty cool stuff going on. We have a veteran recruitment effort out of Fort Drum that we're trying to take off to get more veterans to come here and see Rochester as a place of opportunity. The cool thing about veterans is not only do they come with skills, but they also come with many different benefits that can everything from education benefits to housing benefits. I mean, you name it. So veterans do a lot to really bolster an economy. But in addition to that, we also have what I'm most proud about is our Colors of Success effort, which will be coming out at the end of the month. We'll have our first Colors of Success webinar, which pretty much goes back to my earlier point about the workplace. How do we modernize, I like to use that term, modernize the 21st century workplace where racial equity, gender equity, and all these other factors that have traditionally disadvantaged folks become a feature in the workplace in 2020. And why that is so critical, well, I'll let you ask other questions, but that's the one I'm most passionate about right now, which is Colors of Success. In addition to that introductory level that will be going on in September on the 29th, October 27th, and December, I want to say 17th, we'll also have an in-depth deep dive full day that we're also designing and ironing out the details right now. And we'll also make a customizable option available to companies who have specific, objectives that they want to meet for their organizations. And we'll work hand in hand to make sure they can do that. So there's going to be a number of offerings for our Colors of Success, which will be rolling out in this month.
Well, that's very important, and especially the circumstance that we are living today. I think it's essential, the efforts that your organization and others are doing around this topic. Now, technology and innovation, transformation, thinking differently, thinking outside of the box. What are the initiatives around that specific topic of technology and innovation?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm actually working with a local entrepreneur who founded Cloud Checker. His name's Aaron Newman. And right now we are really trying to make Rochester more attractive to the tech industry. And so right now what we're trying to do is take a survey of what does our tech talent look like? So we created some mock resumes from entry level to intermediate to advanced level tech resumes. And we're working with partners from the Department of Labor, Rochester Works, Access VR to really start to source the resumes of talent that we have right now in this region, so we can start to market and sell those to tech companies in the New York Cities, the Torontos. And what our hope is that we, number one, start to really build a greater preponderance of remote work here from the Amazons, the Facebooks, the startups, you name them. But in addition to that, we also want to diversify some of the satellite locations that currently exist. So how do we go to to R&D being done here, marketing being done here, and some of the other works that these organizations are doing outside of just sales. And then ultimately what we love to see is capital investment, which is synonymous with capital, campus, a major operation. And Rochester really has all of the ingredients to do so. We have RIT, we have the remnants, of the big three. So I think we're positioned. I really believe, though, that we have to start dealing with some of these social maladies that I think deter some of the larger organizations. So that could be crime, that could be poverty, that could be the fact that our largest school district, in effect, does not produce the top tier, high quality talent that they're going to be looking for. And that's another real opportunity point for us, because we are a majority minority community at a time where tech is looking to diversify post haste. So how do we upskill and reskill those populations and use that, really highlight our folks to really recruit some of those jobs to Rochester? So we are working hard on that. We're also going to have a tech committee on our board of directors. Aaron will probably spearhead that as well, but we are really invested in trying to, evolve and diversify our economy into the future. We do a great job with agriculture. We do a great job, with some of the optics and just with some of the, visual work that we do here. But we have to get deeper into tech, because that really is the way the world is moving.
Well, I love the approach, thinking outside of the box and developing new matrices that can maybe give us a better outlook. But one of the challenges that we have is working in the entire New York state. Establishing and investing in this state is not easy. There's high taxes. There's a lot of bureaucracy. What are the strategies that your organization and others are working to create a more friendly business environment for investors to come instead to be leaving the New York state?
So you hit the nail on the head, and I was going to get there. Obviously, the New York Times reported a couple of weeks ago that the three upstate New York cities, so Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, will be the most adversely affected by COVID-19 because of their dependency on state and federal funds. So at some point, we're going to have to look for a major fiscal restructuring of our municipalities. We got not attorney general, but the New York State Comptroller's Office published a report on the school district last year, talking about how pretty much we have overly obligated ourselves to some of our partners in labor, where we never had the revenues to meet some of the obligations that we made. And so I think what COVID-19 hopefully will do is present an opportunity for us to do the work that you're talking about. But I would say that we haven't started doing that yet. In addition to that, we have a whole non-for-profit sector here that is largely dependent on donations and foundations and philanthropic dollars, where we know the private sector has been slammed by COVID-19. And we're not exempt. We've also seen, cuts and losses due to COVID-19, both on our business side and even from our membership side. And so what does that look like next year? Are we going to start to see mergers and acquisitions begin amongst different non-for-profit and non-governmental organizations like us and the GREs and United Ways and the ABCs and, so on and so forth? I think that COVID is going to present a major opportunity for us to really remake our community. I think if we get out ahead of it and we're proactive, then it won't be as bad as it potentially can be. But if we take on a self-preservation mentality and start thinking it's about our turf or our backyard, then things can get really nasty as they start fighting over dollars, fighting over missions. And then in that case, everybody loses, because sustainability is really going to be difficult if we keep things the way they're laid out now.
Well, thank you so much, Adrian. We'll be back with more after these messages. So going back to your personal story, just because I find it so interesting. So you went to city schools and then you ended up at Yale. Mm-hmm. So how, not that can happen, because I know people from city schools that have gone to Harvard and other schools as well. But what would you say to someone that's, someone who's sitting at home and maybe doesn't think they can accomplish their goals, their dreams? What would you say to them? How did you do it?
Well, I always tell folks that I'm so proud to be Sharon and Kenny's son. I grew up in a household that was not void of the challenges of growing up in the inner city. I've seen it all. But what I love about my parents is they instilled a strong sense of faith. And obviously, out of faith, I derived a sense of purpose. And purpose has to be your motivating factor. You know, you have to know what it is that you want to do, even when the circumstances don't look conducive to that or don't look favorable to that. You have to believe in yourself, and you got to be really willing to work hard. But I also want to add this in there too. I would say to a lot of young folks that, you know, in many ways, we've let you all down. Like, we just, as a community, we haven't done as much as we can to give you the kind of odds that you deserve. You know, LeBron James is famous for saying, in the greatest country in the world, we need to eradicate small beginnings, you know, and I love LeBron. And I think, you know, going back to some of my earlier comments, especially the work that I'm doing now, we need to resolve within ourselves, how do we create a world where all things equal, opportunity is unfettered for everyone? And I think oftentimes what we really do is try to convince young kids who have, you know, perceived insurmountable odds and, you know, the impossible, how to believe that they can do it, when in reality, they deserve a childhood and a life that so many others are fortunate to have. And so, you know, on the one hand, if that's not you, then you have to resolve who you want to be, because no one, you are who you're waiting for. You know, you're who you're waiting on. And, you know, I always tell folks that Adrian Hale isn't special. Adrian Hale is just a young man who had parents who gave him the confidence and the belief that he could achieve anything if he put his mind to it and worked hard. But also Adrian Hale was blessed and privileged to have so many people in this community, you know, to really lift me up and support me at times when my family couldn't do it or I couldn't do it, and really help me become the man that I am today.
Adrian, working in the private sector and believing that entrepreneurship and the capacity to build business and be able to create wealth is product of effort, is product of interaction, is product of capacity to build relationships.
Right.
What would be your recommendation to young people right now to start thinking outside of the box and start thinking about be creative? You know, you can read a lot of books of very successful people who were not the most fortunate people. They didn't have really the opportunities, but they worked hard and they visualized opportunities and they thought completely outside of the. I come from a country that is extremely poor. Poverty there is really poverty.
Yeah.
And when you see the results are very interesting and they don't have the conditions. So the question to you is how you motivate people that are even with those adversities and they are able to overcome.
No, I think, you know, going back, you have to believe that there's something bigger than yourself that you're living for, a cause, a mission. I find that selfishness, it doesn't make for a good motivator. You know, at some point you run out of steam. So I would definitely say that, but also I would say that you have to take your destiny in your hands. And I you know, I can remember thinking back as a young kid where, you know, a lot of me and my friends had dreams of being rappers or athletes and whatnot and being discovered. And I don't know when it happened, but at some point I realized that no one's going to discover you. You know what I mean? No one's going to come and save you, that you have to tap into the savior within yourself. And you have to be really, really focused, because so many people can come and taint your vision. So many people can come and distract you from your goals and objectives. And so I would say you have to be so focused and find people who believe in you. You know, oftentimes I think young people have so many supports that they're not aware of. It could be a counselor, it could be a neighbor, it could be an uncle, it could be a cousin, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher. You know, there's so many people in my life, that a coach, you know, that, you know, I didn't even know that they were supporting me, who were supporting me. And you got to just know how to identify those people who really believe in you and want to see you accomplish and achieve your dreams.
Really amazing. I want to say congratulations, because you have a very holistic approach of the things, and you are looking different angles, different ways in the role that you play is fundamental. I am sure that in the future, when we watch this program, we will see you in a very high level. And it's not, you know, but the most important part that I will tell you, Adrian, that is fundamental, and you said it when you were talking, is also that sense of humanity and be able to really love people and work for others, and really understanding that leadership is being a servant and be able to serve others. And I think that is fundamental for our community, our society. So if you can say the last message to our next generation, to the next generation, to the kids that are watching right now.
No, and I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to just say, as a young person, we have an obligation to apply scrutiny and skepticism to everything we're told to just believe as default. Clearly the world that we live in, I refuse to believe this is the best we can do, and I come to work every single day with the mindset that we can genuinely do better. And so I force myself to think differently, to challenge the status quo, to really think about the causes of some of these challenges that we confront, and most of all, restoring our faith and belief in other people. When John Lewis's funeral was going on, one of the biggest things I took away from President Obama's eulogy is that John Lewis had faith in people when they didn't even have faith in themselves. And I think one of the key features of the next generation of leaders is, in a world where so many people are adversely afflicted by their circumstances, we have to believe in the best in them, and hopefully see that their actions and behaviors are a reaction to their situations, but not the cause of their situations. And that if we can give folks better conditions or better odds, they can do better.
Adrian, this was an extraordinary interview. Thank you very much for what you are doing.
Appreciate it.
Doing in the community, and I'm sure that we will have you back here to talk about the progress of the implementation of these great programs. And I'm sure that in the future, you remember, Julio, we will have Adrian, and maybe he will be a senator or a governor. I don't know.
Maybe.
Coming up next week on Be Inspired, we'll meet Christine Vargas from Vargas Associates and learn how she grew her own business after graduating from RIT.
To watch today's episode and the complete interviews of our guests, go to rochesterfirst.com/beinspired. For more great talk with Rochester's entrepreneurs, listen to Poder 97.1 Saturdays at 9 a.m. For Mauricio Riveros, I'm Julio Saenz. We'll see you next week on Be Inspired.